My son wouldn't let me in his house and said my presence would make things uncomfortable. So I canceled his 139 automatic payments and watched his perfect life crumble before my eyes. For 6 years, I funded my son's luxury lifestyle while I lived like a broke, miserable man. That's when I realized what I built I could destroy, and I made a plan to make my own son pay the price. I'm glad you're here. At what age does your child stop being your responsibility? My son was 42 with a 6-figure income, yet I still paid everything. Comment: when should parents say, "You're on your own"? This is fictional exploring parental boundaries, though the questions remain relevant. The smell of fried onions and melted whiz filled my Civic as I drove toward Bryn Mawr, 2 cheesesteaks from Gino's sitting in the passenger seat. Brandon used to beg for these when he was 10, with extra pickles, the way we'd eat them in the car, because we couldn't afford to sit down inside. That was before Courtney, before the main line, before I became the ATM nobody wanted to see. I took the exit and watched the neighborhoods transform Fishtown to Roxborough to Bryn Mawr, where the houses have landscaping budgets bigger than my pension and the cars cost more than I made in 2 years at the post office. Brandon's place sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, all stone and glass and money. I pulled up next to the Range Rover, $150 a month, Courtney's necessity, and killed my engine. My oxidized Civic looked like something that should have been donated to charity in 2015. I grabbed the bag and walked up the stone pathway past the boxwoods I paid Raphael to prune. The motion sensor light clicked on as I pressed the doorbell that played some classical tune Courtney special ordered from Connecticut. The door opened 3 inches, not halfway, not a foot. 3 inches held by Courtney's French manicured hand, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light like a tiny chandelier. That bracelet cost more than my first car. Vincent. My name sounded like an apology she didn't mean. Tonight's really not ideal. I held up the bag. Brought Brandon's favorite, Gino's, still hot. That's thoughtful, but Lily's already in bed, and we really need to preserve our evening routine. Brandon and I have been working on creating more intentional space. She said it like she was reading from one of those wellness blogs. She was always posting the ones where she wore $1,000 athleisure and pretended green juice tasted good. Through that 3-inch gap, I could see into the foyer I'd refinanced my house to build. The chandelier I'd paid to install. The hardwood floors I'd covered with my pension. And Brandon standing 10 feet behind his wife like a shadow looking at everything except me. "Brandon," I called past Courtney. "You hungry?" He shifted his weight, cleared his throat, adjusted a tie he wasn't wearing. "Dad, maybe this weekend. We've got an early morning." "Your father was just leaving." Courtney interrupted, her voice dripping with poisoned honey. "Vincent, you need to understand Brandon's at a very delicate point in his career. We can't have unexpected visits disrupting the household. Perhaps you could text before stopping by. Give us a chance to prepare, like I was a storm warning, a pop quiz." I looked past her and saw the photograph on the wall blown up to poster size, professionally framed in something that probably cost a week's salary. Brandon, Courtney, and Lily at Disney World last summer. Every meal, every overpriced souvenir, every photo with sweating characters in costumes, I'd paid for all of it. The trip that cost more than my first year of college. The trip I wasn't invited to. In that photo, they looked like a magazine ad. Lily's smile genuine. She was 16, still believed in magic if you paid enough. Courtney looked like she'd been born wearing mouse ears and designer sunglasses. And Brandon looked proud, successful, like a man who'd built his own kingdom instead of mortgaging his father's life for the down payment. I wasn't in it. Wasn't anywhere in their perfect narrative. Just the ghost in the background, the signature on the credit card receipt. "Dad!" Brandon's voice cracked. For 1 second, I saw my son again, The kid who sat on my shoulders during the mummers parade, who told me I was his hero. Then Courtney's hand touched his arm, and he went quiet. "It's fine," I said, steadier than I felt. "I understand. You need your space." Courtney smiled, relieved. "I knew you'd be reasonable. That's what makes you such a wonderful father-in-law." The door started to close. "Courtney," I stopped her. "That word you used, uncomfortable. You said my being here makes people uncomfortable." "Well, I know what you meant." I adjusted my grip on the bag nobody wanted. "I just think maybe it's time everyone learned what uncomfortable really means." I didn't wait for her response, just turned and walked back to my car, the motion sensor light clicking off behind me like someone killing the stage lights after the show's over. I sat in my Civic for a long time, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, staring at that house, that monument, to everything I'd given and everything they'd taken. The cheesesteaks were getting cold beside me, grease seeping through the paper, the smell that seemed so good 30 minutes ago, now making my stomach turn. 6 years since Kathy died. 6 years since I'd stood at her grave and promised I'd take care of our boy. I'd kept that promise. Given him everything she left me, her life insurance, her inheritance, our future. Given him comfort and security and a life she would have been proud of. Except she wouldn't have been proud. She would have seen what I was too blind to see, that I wasn't helping our son. I was killing him. Slowly. With every check I signed, every bill I paid, every piece of myself I handed over, like it didn't matter. I started the engine and pulled out of that perfect cul-de-sac with its perfect houses and its perfect lies, driving back toward Fishtown, where people said hello to their neighbors and nobody needed an appointment to bring dinner. The whole way home, I kept thinking about that word, uncomfortable. They were about to learn what it meant. They were about to learn what it cost. And for the first time in 6 years, I felt something shift inside my chest. Not anger, not even hurt. Just clarity, cold, sharp, and absolutely certain. I woke at 5:30, same as I had for 35 years. Body clock trained by decades of pre-dawn mail routes. But this morning felt different. Heavier. Like the walls knew something had shifted. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, black, no sugar, same cracked cup Kathy bought me in 1989. The Formica tabletop had a burn from the previous owner and a water ring we never quite scrubbed out. This was where Kathy sat during those last months, too weak to climb stairs. Where Brandon did his 5th grade math homework, eraser shavings everywhere. That table had seen birthdays, arguments, grief so thick you could taste it. It was about to see one more thing. I opened the drawer that always stuck and pulled out the folder. Plain manila labeled Family Expenses in black Sharpie. I'd started it 6 years ago when Brandon first asked for help with his down payment. Just temporarily. Just until he got established. Temporarily had stretched into 72 months. I spread the bank statements across the table and grabbed my yellow legal pad. Started writing by hand the way I'd learned to track registered mail. When you write something down, you can't pretend you didn't see it. Bryn Mawr mortgage, $5,200 per month, the house with the 3-inch gap in the doorway that said you don't belong here. Range Rover lease, $1,150 per month. Porsche Cayenne lease, $950 per month, 2 cars. Both in my name because Brandon's credit couldn't handle it. Shipley School tuition, $4,200 per month, $50,000 a year for Lily to be around the right kind of people. Fishtown High had been good enough for Brandon. Marion Golf Club, $1,200 per month. Brandon didn't even like golf, but Courtney said it was essential for networking. I kept writing. Insurance policies, property taxes, HOA fees for a gated community with actual guards. House cleaner 3 times a week. Landscaping, pool maintenance, streaming services, meal kits, wine clubs, personal trainers, Botox appointments. I was paying for my daughter-in-law's Botox. I added it up, checked it twice. Then a third time because my brain kept rejecting the number. 172 recurring automatic payments. $19,200 per month. $1,382,400 over 6 years. I wrote it on the folder in numbers so large they took up half the page. Stared at it, trying to make my mind accept what my eyes were seeing. $1.3 million. Where had it come from? I pulled out the other folder, Kathy's legacy, in her handwriting, from when she'd been strong enough to hold a pen. Life insurance, $800,000. Kathy's death, benefit money. She'd worked herself half to death to ensure I'd have TSP withdrawal, $250,000. My retirement savings. Earned carrying mail through ice storms and heat waves. Home equity loan, $180,000. This house paid off over 30 years, now mortgaged again. Personal savings, $100. 000, every penny tucked away in coffee cans and the envelope in Kathy's recipe box. Inheritance, $520,400. From Kathy's father, who worked at the Navy Yard 40 years and never bought a new car. I'd taken everything Kathy left me, every dream of finally traveling, every cushion against disaster, every promise that old age wouldn't mean poverty, and fed it into Brandon's life like quarters into a slot machine that never paid out. The refrigerator kicked on with a wheeze. 22 years old, light burned out for 3 years, seal so worn I could feel cold air on my ankles. But it still worked. That's what you did when you grew up. The way I did, you used things until they died. I looked at my feet. Work socks from Walmart 6-pack. I'd darned the heels twice because throwing away socks with holes seemed wasteful when you could get another year out of them. My hands were shaking, not from cold, from rage so pure it felt like something solid in my chest, something with weight and edges sharp enough to cut. I closed the folder. Just paper touching paper, just manila cardboard meeting wood veneer. But in the silence of my kitchen in the house where I'd raised my son, where I'd loved my wife, that small sound felt final. Like a door closing, like a gavel falling. I stood up, dumped the cold coffee in the sink and put on my coat. Citizens Bank opened at 9 on Saturdays. I had 3 hours to shower, shave, and practice what I was going to say to Mark Williams when I asked him to cancel every single automatic payment tied to my name, all 172 of them. The clarity from last night hadn't faded. It had crystallized into something harder, something that couldn't be talked out of, reasoned with, or guilted into changing its mind. My son needed to learn what I'd learned at his age, that money isn't love. And love isn't money. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone drowning is stop throwing them anchors disguised as life preservers. I left the folder on the table. Didn't hide it. Let it sit there in the morning light, numbers visible, truth undeniable. By 8:30 I'd made my peace with what was coming. The storm, the anger, the accusations, all of it. Because for the first time in 6 years, I wasn't asking what Kathy would have wanted. I was asking what I needed. And what I needed was to stop being the reason they never learned to swim. What I needed was to stop drowning with them. Mark Williams was unlocking the front door when I pulled into the Citizens Bank parking lot. He looked up surprised to see anyone at 9 on a Saturday morning. "Vincent," he waved. "You're up early. Everything okay?" I walked across the lot, folder under my arm. "Need to make some changes, Mark. Significant ones." Something in my voice made him pause. We'd known each other 20 years. He'd processed Kathy's accounts, sent a card when she died. He knew me as the quiet guy who never caused trouble. He held the door open. "Come on in." The bank smelled like carpet cleaner and burnt coffee. Saturday skeleton crew, just Mark and maybe one teller in back. He led me to his office and I sat down, placing the folder on his desk. "See, Mark, I need you to cancel every automatic payment linked to my accounts. All of them. Today." He pulled up my account, clicked through screens. His face went from confusion to concern to shock. "Vincent." He looked over his reading glasses. "You've got 139 recurring payments running through here. Mortgage, car leases, insurance memberships." He kept scrolling. "And this is funding someone's entire life." "My son's life," I said, "and his wife's. I want them all canceled. Every single one. Some of these are major obligations. The mortgage alone is $5,200 a month. If that bounces, I know. Car leases could be repossessed. I know. This school tuition, they don't mess around. Mark." I met his eyes. "I know exactly what I'm doing, and I need you to help me do it." He stared at me, then pulled out a form and started writing. "Okay, this'll take a while. Each cancellation needs individual processing. I've got time. For 6 years, I'd given all my time to people who couldn't even let me through their front door." Mark worked through the list. Mortgage, car leases, school tuition, golf club, house services, insurance policies, subscriptions. Every time he read one aloud, something loosened in my chest. After what felt like an hour, he looked up. "All 139 automatic payments canceled. But Vincent, you've got Brandon listed as your power of attorney. If he has that authority, he could potentially reverse these decisions." I'd thought of that during my 3 hours of planning. "Revoke it." "You sure POA is serious? It means you trusted him to make financial and medical decisions if you couldn't." "I trusted him with a lot of things, Mark. Time to start trusting myself instead." He processed the revocation, made me sign in 3 places, had his assistant notarize it. Done. Brandon no longer has power of attorney. Life insurance policy. I need to change the beneficiary. He pulled it up. Currently, Brandon's primary, Lily's secondary. You want to swap them? No. Lily as the only beneficiary. Remove Brandon entirely. Mark's hand hovered over the keyboard. "Vincent, that's your son." "I know who he is." My voice came out harder than I meant. "And I know what he's become. My granddaughter deserves to know that someone in this family kept their promises. She deserves to know love isn't measured in dollar signs." Mark typed the changes. Done. Lily Carter, sole beneficiary. One more thing. The joint account, the one Courtney has access to. The one ending in 4721. Close it. Transfer whatever's left to my primary checking. Today. He checked the balance. About $1,800. You want it closed completely, that means Courtney won't have access to any funds through this bank. That's the point. He processed it, printed confirmations, slid them across the desk. I looked at the papers. Revocation of power of attorney. Life insurance change. Account closure. Cancellation confirmations for 139 payments. Just paper, just ink and signatures. But it felt like cutting chains. Mark leaned forward. "Vincent, I have to ask, are you sure? Because this is the nuclear option. Everything you just did will cause immediate catastrophic consequences. Mortgage defaults, repossessions, credit destruction. They're going to collapse. Maybe they need to. They're going to be furious. Let them. Vincent." His voice softened. "I've known you a long time. This isn't like you." "No, it's not. The old me would have kept writing checks until I died broke and alone. The old me believed money was the same thing as love. I stood up, gathered my papers. But I'm done with that. He walked me to the door. For what it's worth. Whatever led you here, I hope it works out. I hope they learn what they need to learn. So do I. I stepped outside into October sunshine. Perfect fall day, cool air, blue sky, leaves starting to turn. Girard Avenue was waking up corner stores, opening neighbors on stoops, someone's radio playing Motown. I walked half a block to the coffee shop that had been there 40 years, where they still charged reasonable prices. "Morning, Vincent," Maria called. The usual, and add a glazed donut. The big one. She raised an eyebrow. I never ordered food but wrapped it up. $4.75. I handed her a $5. Keep the change. I sat on the bench outside with my coffee and donut and took a bite. Sweet, soft, probably more sugar than I'd eaten in a month. It was perfect. For 6 years, I'd denied myself everything. Every small pleasure, every unnecessary expense. I'd saved it all for Brandon, for Courtney, for a life I wasn't invited to be part of. This donut cost less than Courtney's monthly meditation app subscription. But it tasted like freedom, like the first breath after being underwater too long, like taking back something that was always mine. I finished my coffee, threw the cup away, and walked back to my car. The folder sat on the passenger seat, proof of everything I'd just done, everything I'd just undone. My phone was silent. They didn't know yet. Probably wouldn't until Monday when the first payment bounced. Maybe not until the school called about tuition, or the bank called about the mortgage, or the leasing company came for the cars. But they'd know soon enough, and when they did, when the calls started, and the accusations flew, and the reality came crashing down, I'd be right here in Fishtown, in the house I'd almost lost, to keep them comfortable, drinking my $4 coffee and remembering what it felt like to choose myself for once. For the first time in 6 years, I wasn't asking what Kathy would have wanted. I was asking what I deserved. And what I deserved was to stop setting myself on fire to keep other people warm. I sat in my armchair, the one Kathy and I bought at a yard sale in 1987, reupholstered twice, with a book I'd been meaning to read for 3 years. I'd never opened it. Too busy tracking payments, managing transfers, making sure Brandon's world kept spinning while mine stood still. But today I had time. The house was quiet. Not the lonely quiet since Kathy died, but the quiet of a storm passing. Of finally being able to hear yourself think. I was 40 pages in when my phone buzzed. 6:45 p.m., Courtney Dad. Our streaming service isn't working, says payment declined. Can you check? I looked at it. Set the phone face down, went back to my book. My phone buzzed again. 7:15 p.m., Brandon electric bill overdue. They're cutting power in 48 hours. Can you handle this tonight? I read the message. Felt nothing where guilt used to live. Set the phone down. By 8 o'clock, my phone was buzzing every 15 minutes. 8 o'clock p.m., Courtney Range Rover payment declined. Lease in default, 8:17 p.m. Brandon Dad, something's wrong. Multiple payments bouncing. Call me. 8:45 p.m. Courtney Golf Club suspended for non-payment. What is happening? 9:30 p.m. Brandon Dad. Call me. Now. Something is very wrong. I got up, went to the kitchen, made myself dinner. Scrambled eggs, toast the good jam I'd been saving. $8 a jar I used to think was too expensive for just me. It tasted better than anything I'd eaten in months. The phone kept buzzing in the other room, muffled, persistent as a fly against a window. I washed my dishes, dried them, put them away, went back to my book. I fell asleep in my chair around 11. Sunday morning I woke to 14 missed calls. I made coffee, scrambled eggs, scrolled through the call log. Brandon, Courtney, Brandon, Brandon, Courtney, Brandon again. One voicemail. I almost didn't listen. But curiosity is powerful. Dad. Brandon's voice was shaking. Not angry yet. Just scared. Dad, I don't know what's happening, but every payment you've been making, everything, it's all been declined. The mortgage, the cars, Lily's school, everything. I can't. His voice cracked. Please, call me back. We need to fix this. Just, please, fix it. Like it was a mistake, a glitch, an error that could be corrected with one phone call, one check signed by a father who couldn't say no. I deleted the voicemail. Then I went outside. The roses were overgrown. Kathy had planted them the year before she got sick, 6 bushes along the fence, pink and yellow and red. I'd been keeping them alive, but hadn't properly pruned them in 2 years. Too busy, too tired. I got the shears from the shed. Pruning roses is simple but brutal. You cut away everything dead or diseased, everything stealing resources from the healthy parts. It looks violent, all those branches falling, but it's not. It's mercy. You prune so the plant can live. I started with the pink bush, Kathy's favorite. Cut away the dead wood, the crossing branches, the growth going nowhere. The thorns caught my hands, drew blood. With each cut, I thought about Brandon, the boy who used to help me in this garden, complaining about thorns, but working anyway. The man who'd forgotten where he came from, who'd built his life on my back and called it success. I wasn't angry. That was the strange part. I was just done. Done being the root system for someone else's flowers. Done pouring everything into soil that gave nothing back. Done pretending money was the same thing as love. I finished the pink roses, moved to the yellow, then the red. By the time I was done, the bushes looked naked, wounded, but they'd grow back stronger. That's what happens when you cut away what's killing them. My phone was ringing inside. I could hear it through the window. I gathered the dead branches, tied them with twine, set them by the curb for trash pickup. The phone kept ringing. I went inside, washed my hands, cuts from thorns stinging under water, and made a sandwich. 6:15 p.m. Brandon, Dad, where are you? 6:47 p.m. Courtney. This is ridiculous. We need to talk. Now. 7:30 p.m. Brandon's school called. Lily's tuition bounced. She's going to be humiliated. Is that what you want? I didn't answer. Didn't pick up the phone to read them properly. I just knew they were there. Knew they were panicking. Knew that somewhere in Bryn Mawr, in the house I'd paid for my son, was finally understanding what it felt like when the ground disappeared beneath your feet. By 9 o'clock, the phone had rung 17 times. I turned it off. Upstairs, I pulled back the quilt. Kathy's mother had made patchwork of old dresses and shirts, stitched with love and patience. I climbed into bed, into sheets I'd washed myself in a house I'd paid for with my own hands. No guilt, no regret. No voice asking what Kathy would think. Because I knew. She'd think I should have done this 5 years ago. She'd think I'd finally remembered who I was. I slept better that night than I had in 6 years. Deep and dreamless and whole. And when I woke Monday morning to 32 missed calls and a text from Brandon saying he was coming over to sort this out, I made breakfast, drank my coffee slow, and waited. Let him come. I wasn't hiding, wasn't running. I was just done chasing people who kept walking away. The thing about pulling a thread is you don't realize how much is connected to it until the whole carpet starts unraveling. I learned that watching my son's life come apart, one service cancellation at a time. Day 3 after our confrontation, the entertainment subscriptions went dark. I didn't know this firsthand. Brandon didn't call to tell me, but I could picture it. Courtney settling onto their leather couch, clicking the remote, finding every streaming service locked. Payment method declined. Over and over. The small humiliation of having to explain to Lily why they couldn't finish their series. I was in my kitchen making lunch tuna sandwich, same as I'd eaten for 30 years, when my phone buzzed. Brandon's streaming accounts aren't working. Can you check if there's a billing issue? I looked at the message for a long time. Watched the 3 dots appear and disappear as he typed something else, then deleted it, then typed again. Brandon, never mind. I set the phone face down and took a bite of my sandwich. Day 5, the landscaping company called Brandon. I know because Mrs. Washington told me she'd seen the lawn crew pack up their equipment and leave after 10 minutes. Haven't seen that in Bryn Mawr before? She said, shaking her head. Those folks pay for everything on time. Not anymore. My phone buzzed again that evening. Courtney, the yard service, says we owe them $1,200 and they won't come back until it's paid. Can you please call them? There's been some mistake. No mistake. Just consequences. I deleted the message. Day 7, the bank notification came. Not to me, I'd removed myself from everything, but Brandon forwarded it, a screenshot of an email. First payment attempt for vehicle lease returned due to insufficient funds. Second attempt will be made in 48 hours. Failure to satisfy payment may result in repossession. That one came with a message. Brandon, Dad, please. I'm trying to handle this, but I need time. Can you just cover the car payment this month? I'll figure out the rest. Just this month. Just this once. Just the word that had ruled my life for 6 years. I stared at that message. Imagined the Range Rover being towed away from the Bryn Mawr driveway. Imagined the neighbors watching. Imagined Lily asking why. My finger hovered over the keyboard. Then I deleted it. But the messages didn't stop. They mutated, evolved, got more desperate and more specific. Courtney, can you send $500? We need groceries, and my card got declined at Whole Foods. Brandon, electric bill is $380. Can you transfer it? Just this once. I'll pay you back. Courtney, Lily needs new shoes for gym class. $120. Please. They'd learned my bank wouldn't process automatic payments anymore, so they were trying manual requests. Testing the boundary. Looking for cracks. Each message was a small knife, precise and sharp. $500 for groceries. I ate on $40 a week. $380 for electric. Mine was $95. $120 for gym shoes. I'd worn the same work boots for 5 years. Delete, delete, delete. My thumb knew the motion. My heart knew something else. Because this was the part they don't tell you about boundaries. They don't tell you that holding them feels like slowly killing something you love. They don't tell you that every notification makes you wonder if you're a father teaching a lesson, or a monster watching his son drown. I sat at my kitchen table, that old Formica witness to everything, and read through the deleted messages folder. 23 messages in 4 days. Requests ranging from $50 to $2,000. Each one a little more desperate. Each one a little more specific about how it would hurt. Lily's tuition is due. They're going to shut off our water. Courtney's mother called, asking why we haven't paid her back the money she loaned us. That last one stopped me cold. They'd been borrowing from Courtney's parents, too. How deep did this go? How many people had they been using? My phone rang. Not a text. An actual call. Brandon's name on the screen. I let it ring. Then ring again. On the third call, I almost answered. Almost, because that's what fathers do, isn't it? Answer when their sons call. But then I remembered Friday night. The door opening 3 inches, Courtney's face, Brandon standing behind her like a ghost. I let it ring. The voicemail notification appeared. I didn't listen to it. I already knew what it would say. Some version of please wrapped in some version of this time will be different. It wouldn't be different. Not unless something fundamental changed. Not unless they learned what I'd learned too late, that you can't build a life on someone else's back. That you can't love someone while bleeding them dry. That money isn't the same as family, and family isn't the same as an ATM machine that never says no. By day 7, my phone had become a battlefield. Each notification was another skirmish I had to win. Delete. Block. Ignore. The discipline of it was exhausting. But what exhausted me more was the guilt. Because every time I deleted a message, I imagined Brandon's face when he realized I wasn't going to respond. Every time I ignored a call, I imagined him telling Courtney, "He's really not going to help." Every time my phone stayed silent after I blocked a request, I imagined Lily asking, "Why won't Grandpa answer? Was I punishing them, or was I freeing them? Was I teaching them to stand on their own feet? Or was I teaching them that love has a limit and they'd reached it? Didn't know. Still don't. All I knew was that if I started answering now, if I sent even one transfer, covered even one bill, it would all have been for nothing. The confrontation, the bank, the canceled payments, the guilt sitting in my chest like a stone. I'd be right back where I started. A wallet with a heartbeat. A checkbook that apologized for existing. So I sat at my table as day 7 turned into night, watching my phone light up with increasingly desperate messages, and I did the hardest thing I'd ever done. Nothing. I did nothing. And I told myself, had to tell myself, had to believe it, like a prayer, that this nothing was something. That this silence was teaching them what my voice never could. That this emptiness was making space for them to figure out who they were when nobody was carrying them. I had to believe that. Because if I didn't, if this was just cruelty dressed up as love, then I'd destroyed my relationship with my son for nothing. The phone buzzed one more time. "Brandon, I know you're getting these. I know you're ignoring them on purpose. Fine. We'll figure it out ourselves. But when this is over, don't expect me to forget that you did this." I read it twice. Then I turned off my phone completely, walked upstairs, lay down on the bed under Kathy's mother's quilt, and stared at the ceiling, trying to remember if there was ever a right way to watch your child fall, trying to believe that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and let gravity teach the lessons you couldn't. Trying to have faith that at the bottom of this fall there might be solid ground. Not certainty, just faith. It would have to be enough. Sunday morning, Bill Thompson slid into the pew next to me 5 minutes before service started. After the final blessing, he touched my elbow. Coffee. Not a question, an intervention. We walked to the diner that had been there since the 60s. Bill waited until we were settled, coffee poured, before he looked at me with those teacher eyes. "You look like hell, Vincent." I wrapped my hands around my mug. I keep wondering if I'm doing the right thing. Watching them struggle, knowing I could fix it with one phone call, knowing Lily's caught in the middle. But you're not fixing it. No. Good. Bill stirred sugar into his coffee. "Vincent, you're not hurting him. You're waking him up. Sometimes love looks like letting go so they can stand on their own. That's not cruelty. That's faith. Faith that he won't hate me. Faith that the boy you raised is still in there somewhere, under all that entitlement and fear." Bill took a sip. "And if he hates you for a while, that's the price. But you're not abandoning him. You're standing in front of a mirror and making him look." I sat with that. The diner hummed around us, dishes clattering, conversations overlapping. What if I'm wrong? Then you're wrong, but at least you'll be wrong while respecting yourself, instead of bleeding yourself dry. I needed that. Because week 2 was about to get worse. Day 9. The tow truck came for the Range Rover. Mrs. Washington's sister saw it happen. Right there in the driveway, in broad daylight, everyone watching. The public humiliation, the neighbors seeing. The understanding that the Carters weren't as successful as they'd appeared. Day 11, the house staff walked away. The cleaner who came 3 times a week, the pool maintenance, the landscaping crew. All gone. You can't pay people in promises, can't maintain appearances when the foundation's gone. My phone started buzzing differently. Not requests, accusations. Brandon Carr's been repossessed. Happy now Courtney House is falling apart. Hope you're satisfied. Then the weapon I'd been waiting for. Brandon fine. Punish me. But what about Lily's school called? Tuition's overdue, $25,200. They're expelling her if we don't pay by Friday. I don't have it, Dad. So what's it going to be? You going to let your granddaughter get kicked out to prove a point? I stared at that message for a long time. $25,200. I had it. Sitting in my account right now. Could transfer it in 5 minutes. Could save Lily from embarrassment, disruption, pain. My finger hovered over the keyboard. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Carter. A woman's voice. Professional, tired. This is Ms. Bennett from Shipley School. I'm calling regarding Lily's account. My heart sank. Yes. We have a significant balance outstanding, $25,200. If the account isn't current by Friday, Lily will need to withdraw. I understand. Mr. Carter, I'm calling you because your son hasn't responded to our messages, and you're listed as having made previous payments. I wanted to reach out directly. I could hear everything Bill had said, hear Kathy's voice, hear my own words from that Monday. The world doesn't owe you anything, and neither do I. Ms. Bennett, I said, voice steadier than I felt. You need to speak directly with Brandon Carter about this. We've tried. He says he's working on it, but then he's working on it. Mr. Carter, with all due respect, if the account isn't settled. I understand, but I'm not the one who needs to settle it. Silence. Long enough, I thought she'd hung up. Are you saying you won't cover the tuition? I'm saying I no longer have authority over that account. Brandon is Lily's father. He needs to handle this directly with you. More silence. Then, I see. Well, thank you for your time, Mr. Carter. She hung up. I set the phone down. My hands were shaking, actually trembling, like I'd just done something physically difficult, instead of just saying no. $25,200. I had it. Right there. Could save Lily right now. But Bill's words echoed, sometimes love looks like letting go so they can stand on their own. If I paid now, if I swooped in to save Lily, what would I be teaching Brandon? That he could always use his daughter as leverage, that enough guilt would make me cave. That no didn't really mean no. My phone buzzed. Brandon. I didn't read it, just set it face down and walked to the window. Lily would be okay. Public school wasn't death. Thousands of kids thrived there. I had. Brandon had. She would too. And maybe losing Shipley would be the thing that finally made Brandon understand his daughter didn't need a $50,000 education. She needed a father who knew how to stand on his own. My hands were still shaking. But underneath the trembling, underneath the guilt and doubt and fear, underneath all that was something solid, something that felt like integrity, like self-respect. Like finally, after 6 years of being a wallet instead of a father, I was remembering what it meant to love someone enough to let them fall. Even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. Mark Williams's voice on the phone wasn't the calm, professional banker tone I was used to. It was tight, urgent. "Vincent, can you come to the bank right now? I just found something very wrong." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Mark in his glass office, the same office where I'd canceled everything 3 weeks ago. But this time, Mark's face was different. Not concerned, angry. "I've been reviewing your old accounts," he said, "trying to make sure we caught everything when we revoked Brandon's power of attorney. And I found withdrawals I don't think you authorized." He turned his computer screen toward me. A spreadsheet, rows and rows of transactions highlighted in yellow. "Cash withdrawals," Mark said, "made using the POA authority over the past 2 years. My stomach dropped. "How much?" Mark hesitated. Then, $75,000. The number hung in the air between us. I couldn't breathe around it. "Show me." He clicked through the statements. March of last year, $5,000. Cash withdrawal authorized by Brandon Carter, power of attorney. June, $10,000. September, $8,000. On and on. Sometimes $3,000. Sometimes $7,000. Never the same amount, never the same interval. Small enough to hide in the noise of all the other payments. Large enough to add up. "These were all beyond the automatic payments you were already making," Mark said quietly. "These were separate, additional." I stared at the screen. Did the math. $19,200 a month I'd been knowingly giving them, plus another $3,000, something a month I hadn't known about. Over 2 years. $75,000 stolen while I slept. "Vincent." Mark's voice was gentle but firm. "This is elder financial abuse. It's a crime. If you need, we can report this to the police right now. I have a detective I work with on cases like this. One call." "Cases like this," I repeated. My voice sounded far away. POA abuse. It happens more than people think. Adult children with access parents who trust too much. Mark slid a business card across the desk. "Detective Sarah Morrison, Financial Crimes Unit. You don't have to decide right now. But Vincent, you should know this isn't just taking advantage. This is theft. Criminal theft." I picked up the card. The paper felt thin, insignificant. One call, one conversation. My son in handcuffs. "Where did it go?" I asked. "The money. Do you know?" Mark shook his head. "Cash withdrawals don't leave that kind of trail. He could have deposited it somewhere else, spent it, gambled it, we don't know." But I knew. Suddenly I knew. Brandon's investment opportunities he'd mentioned over the years. The ones that never quite worked out. The tech startup that failed. The real estate deal that fell through. All those times he'd called asking for just a little more to break even. And Courtney. The jewelry I'd seen her wear at that last dinner, the pieces that seemed to appear out of nowhere. The designer bags. The spa weekends she posted about. They hadn't just been living on my monthly payments. They'd been stealing extra, lying extra, hiding extra, and I'd never checked, never questioned, never looked at the statements closely enough because I trusted him, because he was my son. "Thank you, Mark," I said, "for finding this. What do you want to do?" I looked at the detective's card. One call. "I need to think. I didn't go home. I drove." through Fishtown across the river out toward the main line, but not to Bryn Mawr, to Ardmore, to the small rental apartment complex where Mrs. Washington's sister had told me Brandon and Courtney had moved after they lost the house. Building C Unit 2B, a far cry from the mansion with the motion sensor lights and the professionally pruned boxwoods. I sat in my car in the parking lot, stared at the building. Second floor, left side. I could see a light on behind the curtains. The detective's card was in my hand. I kept turning it over, front, back, one call, my son had stolen from me, not just taken what I'd given, not just accepted too much. He'd actively, deliberately, secretively stolen $75,000 while I trusted him with power of attorney, while I gave him access to my accounts because he was my son, and I thought I'd believed. I pulled out my phone. Started to dial, stopped, started again. Stopped. If Kathy were here, but she wasn't. She was in a grave in Holy Sepulchre Cemetery, with a headstone that said, "Beloved wife and mother." The life insurance money that was supposed to take care of me was gone. The money her father had left her, the man who'd worked at the Navy Yard for 40 years, gone. The money we'd saved together, penny by penny, paycheck by paycheck, gone. And not just gone to support Brandon's life. Gone to fund his lies. He stole from us love. I whispered to the dashboard, to the air, to wherever Kathy was listening. Our son is a thief. Not just a dependent adult child. Not just a man who'd never learned to stand on his own. A thief. Someone who'd looked at his father's trust and seen an opportunity. Who'd used legal access to drain accounts. Who'd lied about where money went. Who'd stabbed me in the back while I was sleeping. The rage came then. Hot and clean and absolute. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I wanted to call Detective Morrison. Wanted to watch Brandon's face when the police came. Wanted him to learn what consequences meant in the real world, not just the safe, cushioned world I'd built for him. I sat there for 20 minutes, watching that lit window, imagining making that call, imagining not making it, imagining what Kathy would say. She'd be heartbroken. But she wouldn't be surprised, because Kathy had seen it before. I'd seen Brandon's entitlement taking root, seen the way money became a substitute for effort. She'd tried to warn me. "Vincent," she'd said more than once, "you're not helping him. You're crippling him." And I'd done it anyway, because saying no felt like not loving him enough. Now here I was, with proof that my love hadn't just crippled him, it had corrupted him. The detective's card weighed nothing. Could have been a feather. Could have been an anvil. One call. That's all it would take. But if I called now, if I went straight to criminal charges, I'd never get the truth. Never hear him admit it. Never give him the chance to explain, to beg forgiveness, to face what he'd done. And I needed that. Needed to look him in the eye and show him the numbers. Needed him to see what he'd taken. Needed him to understand that I knew. All of it. Every lie. Every theft. Every betrayal. I put the card in my pocket. Didn't call. Not yet. But I kept it. Because maybe mercy had limits. Maybe love had boundaries. Maybe forgiveness required acknowledgement first. I got out of the car. Walked across the parking lot. Up the stairs. Down the hallway that smelled like old carpet and someone's dinner. Unit 2B. I could hear a TV on inside. Voices. Brandon's. Courtney's. Normal. Like nothing was wrong. Like they hadn't systematically stolen from the man who'd given them everything. I raised my hand and knocked. Not the way I'd knocked on their Bryn Mawr door 3 weeks ago, holding cheesesteaks and hope. Not the way I'd stood on that porch, waiting to be let in, waiting to be wanted. This time I knocked like someone who had every right to be there. Because this time I wasn't asking for anything. This time I was bringing the truth. And Brandon was going to answer for it. The door opened. Brandon stood there in stained sweatpants, a dirty t-shirt, unkempt beard reeking of stale beer. This was my son, investment banker, six-figure salary. This was what was left. Dad. His voice cracked. Not surprise, resignation. We need to talk. I walked past him into the apartment. Small, shoebox small. Couch TV on a folding table, dishes piled in the sink. The kind of place you rented when you'd lost everything. I pulled the bank statements from my jacket and threw them on the coffee table. Explain. $75,000. Where did it go? Brandon looked at the papers, then at me. His face went through denial, panic, defeat. Then he dropped to his knees. His legs just gave out. Dad, He couldn't finish. Where did it go? Gambling. The word came out muffled through his hands. Online gambling. I had a problem. Have a problem. How long? 2 years. Started with football betting. Small stuff. Then poker sites and... His voice broke. I couldn't stop. Every time I lost, I thought I could win it back. It kept getting worse. I stood there looking down at my 42-year-old son on his knees on stained carpet. Sports betting, he continued. High stakes. I was down 30,000, thought I could make it back. But the house always wins. And I kept taking more. Using the POA to pull cash. Lying about where it went. Investment opportunities, I'd say. And you never checked. You trusted me. That hurt worse than the theft. He'd known I wouldn't look, wouldn't question. And that's not all, I said. You lost your job 2 weeks ago. His head snapped up. How? Stephen Crawford called me. Your boss. Said your work had been deteriorating for months. Professional ethics violation. Couldn't focus. Missed deadlines. I pulled out the detective's card, let him see it. And Courtney, I continued. She knew, didn't she, about the gambling? Fear crossed his face. She found out 6 months ago. Went through my phone. Brandon's voice got smaller. I thought she'd leave, but she said if I wanted to keep gambling, fine. But I had to keep buying her things. Jewelry, spa trips, keep up appearances. He looked up at me. She said if I didn't, she'd take Lily, file for full custody, tell the courts about the gambling. I'd never see my daughter again. Courtney hadn't just been living off my money. She'd been blackmailing my son with it. So you kept stealing from me, I said, to pay gambling debts and buy your wife's silence. I'm sorry. Brandon was sobbing now. Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to stop. Couldn't stop gambling, couldn't stop Courtney, couldn't tell you, because you'd already given me so much, and I'd wasted it. Gambled it away. And I couldn't face you, couldn't admit I'm a failure. A thief. I looked at him. Saw the boy who used to help me rake leaves. Saw the man at his mother's grave promising to make her proud, and saw a stranger who'd stolen $75,000 from his father and lied for 2 years. I set the detective's card on the coffee table next to the bank statements. Elder financial abuse, I said. That's what they call it, a crime. I could call Detective Morrison right now. You'd be arrested, charged, convicted. Courtney would take Lily. You'd lose everything. Brandon stared at the card like a loaded gun. Please, he whispered. Dad, please. You're 42 years old. Had a good job, a beautiful daughter, and you threw it all away. For cards. For the thrill of risking money you didn't earn. I need help. I know I need help, but I don't know how without losing everything. You've already lost everything, I said. Your house, your cars, your job, your dignity. The only question is whether you lose your daughter too. And me. Are you going to call? I held the card. Brandon watched like a man watching a judge reach for the gavel. Not today, I said. Dad. Not because you deserve mercy. Not because this is forgivable, but because calling police would be too easy. You'd go to jail, I'd feel righteous. But you wouldn't change. You'd just be punished. And punishment doesn't fix addiction. I put the card in my pocket, not throwing it away, keeping it as an option. I'm leaving now. You have a choice. Keep lying, keep gambling, keep letting Courtney control you. Or get help, real help. Gamblers Anonymous, therapy, whatever it takes to become someone your daughter can be proud of. I walked to the door, stopped. I'm not giving you another dime, I said. Not for rent, not for food, not for Lily. You want to be her father, earn it. Figure out how to stand on your own. Dad. His voice was shattered. How do I start? You wake up tomorrow and do the next right thing, and then the next one. Until doing right things is more familiar than doing wrong ones. I opened the door, and Brandon. I looked back. This is the last time I save you. Next time you fall, you crawl out yourself. Or you don't. That's not my choice anymore. It's yours. I left him there, walked to my car, got in, started the engine. The detective's card was in my pocket. I didn't call. Not because I was weak. Not because I'd forgiven him. I didn't call because for the first time in 40 years, I understood something fundamental about being a father. You can't save someone from themselves. You can only step back and let them decide if they want to be saved. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let them fall. All the way down, until they hit bottom and have to choose stay down or climb back up. I'd spent 6 years, maybe 42 years, building safety nets, cushioning falls, making sure Brandon never hit the ground hard enough to hurt. All I'd done was teach him that falling didn't matter, that consequences weren't real, that Dad would always catch him. Not anymore. Now, if he wanted to climb out this pit of addiction and theft and lies, he'd have to do it himself. I'd be there when he reached the top. If he reached the top, but I wouldn't be down there with him, wouldn't throw him a rope, wouldn't make the climb easier. Because the only way he'd learn to stand was if nobody else was holding him up. I drove home, made dinner, went to bed. And for the first time since this started, I didn't feel guilty. I felt like a father. They say trouble comes in threes. Same week I discovered the embezzlement. Same week I watched my son confess to stealing $75,000. Everything else came crashing down. Wednesday afternoon, Stephen Crawford called. Vincent, I wanted you to know Brandon's termination was week 1, right after whatever happened between you two. My stomach dropped. I didn't know it was that long ago. His performance had been declining for months. Missed deadlines, client complaints. The final straw was using company resources for gambling sites during work hours. Stephen sighed. His career in finance is essentially over. Word gets around. No firm will touch him. A banker who couldn't manage his own money. Some people have to hit rock bottom before they're willing to change, Stephen said. I thanked him, hung up, stared at my kitchen wall. Rock bottom. I'd thought cutting off money was rock bottom. Apparently we weren't there yet. Thursday evening, someone pounded on my door. Courtney. No designer clothes this time. Jeans, plain shirt. She looked smaller without the armor of expensive things, and angrier. "This is your fault," she said, pushing past me. "All of it. You destroyed our lives. I stopped enabling theft. Enabling you built that life for us. Then you yanked it away like we were puppets." She gestured around my living room. "While judging us from your moral high ground in this dump." The word hit like a slap. This dump. The house Kathy and I had built our life in. "Get out," I said quietly. "Gladly. I'm leaving. Going back to my parents in California. Because I didn't marry a broke, unemployed gambler living in a one-bedroom apartment." She grabbed her purse. "Lily can stay with her loser father and figure out what it's like to be poor." "You're taking Lily. I'm taking myself. Lily can stay with Brandon." "Courtney, whatever happens to Brandon now, that's on you. You broke him. So when he drinks himself to death, remember you're the one who decided tough love was more important than family." She slammed the door. I stood there, her words echoing. "You broke him." My chest felt tight. That night, the pain started. Not emotional, physical. A pressure in my chest like someone squeezing. My left arm ached, tingled, went numb. Heart attack. I called 911, gave my symptoms, my address. Sat down because standing felt impossible. The ambulance came fast. Sirens, lights, neighbors watching. In the ambulance, a young EMT took my blood pressure, hooked me to monitors. "You're having a cardiac event, sir. Try to stay calm." Calm. While my son was drinking himself into oblivion. While my daughter-in-law had just told me I'd destroyed my family. While my granddaughter was trapped in a war zone I'd created. Was Courtney right? Had I been too cruel? The monitor beeped. The siren screamed. Should I have just kept paying, kept the peace? The ambulance doors opened. Bright lights. Hospital. Voices. Everything blurred. I woke up in a hospital bed. Machines beeping. IV in my arm. Bill Thompson in the chair beside me holding my hand. "You scared the hell out of me," Bill said. "What time is it?" "Midnight. You've been here 6 hours. Stress-induced cardiac event. Not a full heart attack, but close. They're keeping you overnight." "Brandon is not your problem right now. Vincent's stress is killing you. Literally. The doctor said if you don't manage this, the next one could be fatal." I closed my eyes. "I don't know what else to do," Courtney said. "I don't care what Courtney said. She's been bleeding you dry for years." Bill squeezed my hand. "You gave Brandon a chance to be human, to stand up, to face what he'd done. That's all a father can do. But he has to seize it. You can't seize it for him. What if he doesn't? What if he just falls? Then he falls, and you'll be there when if he's ready to climb back up. But you can't go down there with him. You'll both drown." Bill stayed until I fell asleep. Or pretended to. At 2 a.m, I was still awake. Hospital rooms don't let you sleep. Too many beeps, too much light, too many thoughts chasing circles. My phone lit up. Text message. "Lily, Grandpa, I'm so scared." Mom packed her bags and left. "Dad's been drinking and won't talk to me. Can I please come live with you? I don't know what else to do." My hands shaking, I typed slowly. "Me, yes, sweetheart. I'll have Uncle Bill pick you up tomorrow morning. Pack whatever you need. You're coming home to Grandpa. I love you." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Lily, thank you. I love you too. I'll be ready." I set the phone down, stared at the ceiling, felt something shift in my chest that had nothing to do with cardiac events. For 3 weeks I'd been cutting away, pruning, removing everything dead and diseased from my life, watching relationships burn, watching my son collapse, watching my own health deteriorate, and I'd wondered if I was doing the right thing. If tough love was just cruelty with better PR, if boundaries were just abandonment. But in that hospital bed, reading Lily's text, I finally understood. I hadn't been destroying Brandon's family. I'd been clearing the rubble so something real could grow. Brandon's marriage had been built on lies and money and blackmail. His career had been built on someone else's funding. His whole life had been a house of cards I'd been holding up, too afraid to let go because I thought the fall would kill him. But the fall wasn't killing him. The not falling was. And in all that destruction, in all that burning and cutting and falling away, there was Lily, 16 years old, innocent, caught in a war she didn't start, asking her grandfather if she could come home. Not to the mansion, not to the private school and Range Rovers, home, to the row house in Fishtown with the cracked formica and the 22-year-old fridge, to safety, to stability, to someone who loved her for her. That was worth it. All of it. Every hard boundary. Every canceled payment. Every night of guilt and doubt. Because Lily was the seedling in the ashes. And if I had to burn down everything else to make sure she had room to grow, then that's what I'd do. I closed my eyes. Finally slept. Tomorrow, Bill would pick her up. Bring her here to this home that was paid for and simple and real. And we'd start over. The two of us. Grandfather and granddaughter. Building something that didn't need my bank account to hold it together. Just love. Bill's Civic pulled up just after 3 Saturday afternoon. I was still moving slow doctor's orders, but the sight of Lily on my porch with 2 large suitcases made my heart do something the hospital wouldn't have approved of. She was wearing jeans and a Shipley sweatshirt, hair in a ponytail. When she saw me, she ran, straight into my arms. "Grandpa," she whispered. "I told Dad I wanted to live with you. He said okay, said he's not capable of taking care of me right now, that you're the only person he trusts." Something cracked in my chest. "You're home now," I said. "You're safe." Bill carried the suitcases up, gave Lily a gentle pat. "Call if you need anything, kiddo." And Vincent Doctor said rest. "I mean it." "I will." Bill left with a wave, and suddenly it was just us, me and my granddaughter, standing in front of the house where Brandon grew up. "Come on," I said. "Let me show you your room." Lily had visited before brief stops during those years, when I was funding their life-quick hugs before Courtney honked from the driveway. But she'd never really seen it. Never lived in it. Now, walking through with her suitcases, I watched her take it in with new eyes. The worn couch Kathy and I bought secondhand in 1992, the TV from 2010, the coffee table with water rings and a crack from when Brandon crashed into it practicing skateboard moves indoors. The faded carpet, not fancy, but clean, paid for, and hers now. "It's quieter than I remembered," Lily said. "No dishwasher running, no music in 3 rooms, just us. I like it. It feels safe." "That's because it is." I led her upstairs. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. My room. The guest room I used for storage. And at the end of the hall, I opened the door. Brandon's room. I hadn't changed it in 24 years. The twin bed with the blue comforter Kathy bought when Brandon was 12. The desk where he'd done homework, where I'd helped with 5th grade math, where he'd written college essays. The bookshelf with Hardy Boys novels and old textbooks. On the dresser covered in dust soccer trophies. 5 of them. Brandon had played from ages 8 to 13. Most were participation awards, but one said Most Improved Player 1995. On the wall, his high school diploma. Brandon Michael Carter, Fishtown High School, class of 2000, 24 years ago. Lily walked in, slowly touching things gently. She picked up the smallest trophy and wiped the dust with her sleeve. Dad played soccer. He did. Was pretty good. Loved being part of a team. I sat on the bed, suddenly tired. Your dad had a lot of good in him, Lily. Still does. He just got lost. She turned eyes wet. Can I really stay here? This is your home now, for as long as you need it. Even though it's my fault that you and Dad fought if I hadn't needed private school. Stop. I took her hands. None of this is your fault. You didn't make your father steal. You didn't make your mother leave. You're the only innocent person in this mess. But you didn't need private school. Your parents wanted it. Big difference. I squeezed her hands. Public school will be fine. Your dad went to Fishtown High. I went there. We turned out okay. She smiled, small but real. Okay is pretty good. Okay is excellent. We spent the next hour unpacking. Lily's clothes in the dresser that once held Brandon's, her books on the shelf, her makeup bag in the bathroom we'd share. Small conversations filled the spaces. Not this drawer for socks. Perfect. That one for shirts. What time do you eat breakfast? Around 7, too early. No. I catch the bus at 8:15. I'll drive you, at least the first few weeks. You don't have to. I want to. She relaxed, starting to believe this was real. We talked about house rules. Be safe. Let me know where you are, do homework. About dinner, she liked spaghetti, hated Brussels sprouts. About laundry day Sundays. About the piano downstairs still worked if she wanted to learn. These conversations mattered. Not mortgage is due or tuition bounced. Just what do you like for breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast. Not too much butter. Now I knew. By the time we finished, the sun was setting. Golden light through the window made everything soft and warm. Lily sat on the bed and looked around. At the trophies. At the diploma. At her clothes in the drawers. Thank you, Grandpa, she said quietly, for not giving up on us. I didn't give up on you, sweetheart. Never could. She nodded, then reached into the bottom of her suitcase, the one we'd just emptied. Her hand disappeared into the corner. When it came back out, she was holding something wrapped in an old t-shirt. She unwrapped it slowly. A piggy bank. Ceramic pink, the kind you can't open without breaking. It had a small chip on one ear. Bigger than I expected. Heavier. The kind that could hold years of allowance. Lily held it in her lap with both hands protecting it. Her thumb traced the chipped ear. Can I show you this, Grandpa? She asked. Her voice was soft, shy, like she was sharing something secret. I sat beside her. Of course, sweetheart, I said, still watching. Drop a comment sharing what you think that piggy bank means to Lily. Your theory might be closer than you think. Before we continue, this story contains dramatized elements created for storytelling purposes. Feel free to stop here or keep going to discover the truth. Lily sat on the edge of the bed, and I sat beside her. The piggy bank rested between us on the faded quilt. Can I show you now, Grandpa? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. Of course, sweetheart. She lifted it over her head and brought it down hard against the wooden floor. The crack was sharp and final. Ceramic shards scattered across the hardwood, and coins spilled everywhere, quarters, dimes, nickels rolling under the bed and into the corners. Dollar bills fluttered out, crumpled and soft from years inside that narrow slot. But it wasn't the money that made me freeze. It was the folded paper. Lily picked it up carefully, smoothing out the creases before handing it to me. Her hands were shaking, and I could see tears already forming in her eyes. The paper was lined notebook paper, the kind with 3 holes punched on the side. At the top, in Lily's careful handwriting, were the words, "Beach trip with Grandpa." Below that was a budget, a real budget, written in blue ink with neat columns. Hotel 2 nights, $240, train tickets, round trip, $86, boardwalk games, $50, ice cream lots, $40, crab dinner, $120, souvenirs, $60, emergency fund, $100, miscellaneous, $434. At the bottom, underlined 3 times, total budget, $130. And beside it, in red pen that looked newer than the rest, saved so far, $1,847. I stared at those numbers. My throat closed up. I looked at Lily, and she was crying now, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You promised me when I was 8, she said, her voice breaking. "You said we'd go to Cape May together, just you and me. We'd walk on the beach at sunrise and eat crabs with our hands, and you'd teach me how to find the best shells." I remembered. God help me, I remembered. It was summer 6 years ago. We'd been sitting on my porch drinking lemonade, and Lily had asked me what the ocean felt like. I told her about Cape May, about how Kathy and I used to take Brandon there when he was small, before everything got complicated. I'd promised her we'd go. Someday soon. But someday never came. And every time I brought it up, Lily continued wiping her face with the back of her hand. "Mom would say you were too busy. Or Dad would say we were going somewhere better, Disney World or a cruise or some resort with a spa. But I didn't want those trips, Grandpa. I wanted Cape May. I wanted to go with you." Her voice cracked, and she had to stop and breathe before she could keep going. So I started saving. Every birthday when Grandma sent me a card with $20. Every Christmas when Uncle Ray gave me $50. Every week when Dad gave me allowance for doing chores. I put it all in there. She gestured at the broken pieces of ceramic, at the coins still scattered across the floor. Every single dollar. She looked down at her hands, twisting them together in her lap. I didn't buy the new iPhone when my old one stopped working right. I told Mom the screen was fine even though it had cracks. I didn't get the designer sneakers all my friends were wearing. I wore the hand-me-downs from my cousin and told everyone I liked them better anyway. A sob escaped her, and she covered her mouth. "Because I wanted to take you somewhere, Grandpa. Everyone always said you were the one who paid for everything. You gave, and nobody ever gave anything back. And I wanted to give you something. Something that was mine." I sat there holding that piece of notebook paper, staring at her round, careful numbers. 6 years. She'd been saving for 6 years. Since she was 8 years old. Mil osemsto $17,000. For a 14-year-old, that was everything. Every birthday, every Christmas, every bit of allowance she'd ever earned, folding laundry or washing dishes or whatever small tasks Brandon had given her. Not spent on herself. Saved. For me, I looked at the coins on the floor, quarters and dimes and nickels, the humble currency of childhood. I looked at the crumpled dollar bills. I looked at her budget, written and rewritten as prices changed, as she learned more about what things cost. My hands started to shake. Numbers flooded my mind. Miljuni tlayet mija u tmienja u tnain elf erba mija. 172 automatic payments. $19,200 every single month for 6 years. I'd given Brandon everything: my retirement, Kathy's life insurance, my home equity. I'd burned through over $1 million to keep him comfortable. And he'd stolen $75,000 on top of it. He'd gambled it away. He'd bought things he didn't need to impress people who didn't care. He'd let Courtney spend thousands on jewelry and designer bags. And when the money finally stopped, he'd called me selfish. He'd called me cruel. He'd accused me of destroying his family. He'd never once said thank you. But this child, this beautiful, selfless child, had spent 6 years giving up every small joy a teenager wants. No new phone, no trendy shoes, no trips to the mall with friends. She'd saved every dollar, every quarter, every dime. Not for herself, for me. Because she'd seen me give everything to everyone, and she'd wanted to give something back. Not because she owed me, not because she wanted something in return, but because she loved me. Lily, I whispered. She looked up at me, her face red and streaked with tears. You didn't have to do this, I said, barely able to get the words out. I know, she said quietly. But I wanted to. You deserved it, Grandpa. You deserve someone to take care of you for once. Something inside me broke. I set the paper down on the bed and pulled her into my arms. She buried her face in my shoulder, and I held her tight, feeling her small frame shake with sobs. And then I cried. Really cried. For the first time in years, I let everything go. The exhaustion, the betrayal, the humiliation, the crushing weight of giving and giving until there was nothing left. I cried for Kathy, who died believing our son would become the man she'd raised him to be. I cried for the 35 years I'd spent carrying mail in the rain and snow, for the $1 million I'd poured into a hole that never filled. I cried for every boundary I'd never set, every time I'd said yes when I should have said no. But most of all, I cried because of this child in my arms. This child who'd seen my worth when no one else had. Who'd loved me the right way. Who'd given up iPhones and designer shoes and all the things her friends had just to save enough money to take her grandfather to the beach. $1.3 million hadn't bought me a damn thing. It had bought dependency and entitlement and theft. It had bought resentment disguised as love. But $1,847 had bought back my soul. I pulled back and looked at Lily cupping her tear-stained face in my hands. We're going, I said, my voice steady now. Next weekend, you and me. Cape May. We'll stay in the nicest hotel on that list. We'll eat crabs until we're sick. We'll walk the beach at sunrise and find shells and ride every ride on the boardwalk twice. She started to protest. But Grandpa, I shook my head. Your money is going into a real savings account. For college or your first car or whatever dream you have down the road. But this trip, this one's on me, because you've already given me everything that matters. She threw her arms around my neck and held on tight. I looked down at the broken pieces of the piggy bank scattered across the floor, at the coins and crumpled bills that represented 6 years of sacrifice. Everyone else had loved my wallet, but Lily had loved me, and that made all the difference in the world. Healing doesn't arrive with trumpets and fanfare. It comes quietly on a Saturday morning when your granddaughter burns pancakes and you eat them like they're caviar. I sat at my kitchen table watching Lily scrape blackened batter off the griddle, her tongue sticking out in concentration. The smoke alarm had gone off twice. She turned to me with an apologetic grin, flour smudged across her cheek. They're perfect, I said, cutting into the charred disc on my plate. And somehow they were. Because she'd made them. Because she was here. Because for the first time in 6 years, my kitchen felt like a home. The new normal came in small moments like these. Monday through Friday, I drove the Civic to Northeast High School. No more Shipley uniforms. No more luxury SUVs in the parking lot. Just regular kids in hoodies and sneakers. On the third day, as Lily buckled her seatbelt, she looked at me and said, "It's nice, Grandpa, just being a regular kid." Nobody cares what shoes I'm wearing, they just see me. Her voice was so light, like she'd been carrying a weight I hadn't known about, and had finally set it down. I reached over and squeezed her hand. You were always just you, sweetheart. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. We fell into a rhythm breakfast, together homework at the kitchen table while I cooked dinner old movies on Friday nights with popcorn. The house was fuller than it had been in years, even though it was just the two of us. I didn't hear from Brandon, not for 5 weeks. I told myself it was better that way, that he needed to figure out his own life without my checkbook. But late at night, when the house was quiet, I'd wonder where he was, if he was eating, if he was sober. Then, on a Sunday morning in late November, there was a knock at my door. Brandon stood on my porch, looking different. Thinner, his face gaunt in a way that aged him. But his eyes were clearer. His clothes were clean jeans and a gray hoodie, nothing designer. His hands weren't shaking. "Hi, Dad," he said quietly. I stood there, hand on the doorknob, waiting. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A plastic chip with 30 days printed in gold letters. He held it out like an offering. "Gamblers Anonymous," he said. "I've been going every day, 30 days clean. No bets, no casinos, nothing." I took the chip. It was warm from his pocket light and weightless, but I saw what it meant. 30 days of choosing not to gamble. 30 days of sitting in church basements admitting what he'd done. 30 days of crawling forward. "I'm working at Target," he continued, voice steady but quiet. "On Roosevelt Boulevard, stocking shelves, $16 an hour. It's not much, but it's honest." I looked up at him. "I sold the Porsche, got $18,000. I wired it to your account last week. I know it's not close to what I took, but it's a start. I'm going to pay back every dollar, Dad, even if it takes the rest of my life." Part of me wanted to pull him inside to forgive everything right there. But another part, the part that had been burned too many times, held back. "Come in," I said finally. He hesitated like he wasn't sure he'd heard right. Then he crossed the threshold. We sat in the living room. I made coffee black for both of us. The silence was heavy, but not hostile. The silence of two people who didn't know where to start. "How's Lily?" he asked. "She's good. At a birthday party right now." He nodded, jaw tightening. "Does she hate me?" I looked at him and saw the fear. Not fear of losing money or status. Fear of losing his daughter's love. "No," I said. "She doesn't hate you. She's confused. She's hurt, but she doesn't hate you." He looked down, blinking hard. "I want to see her," he said, voice breaking. "Not to take her back, I know I don't deserve that. But just to talk. To tell her I'm sorry. To show her I'm trying." I set my coffee down. "You can see her. Here, with me present. She's not ready for more than that, and neither am I. But if you keep showing up, really showing up, we'll figure it out." Relief flooded his face. "Thank you. Thank you, Dad." "Don't thank me," I said. "Thank yourself if you keep going. That chip." I nodded toward it on the table. "That's just the first one. You've got a lot more to earn." "I know," he said. "I will. I promise." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. When he stood to leave an hour later, I walked him to the door. He turned back on the porch, and for a moment I saw the boy he used to be. The kid who'd helped me rake leaves. The teenager who'd called from college just to hear my voice. "I'm taking the bus," he said, nodding toward the street. 3 transfers to get home. Gives me time to think. I watched him walk down the cracked sidewalk toward the bus stop. his shoulders hunched against the cold hands in his pockets. No luxury car, no driver, just my son walking to catch public transit. And as I stood there, I realized something. I'd rather have a son who stocked shelves at Target with integrity than a financial director living in a mansion built on lies. The bus pulled up. Brandon climbed aboard. I closed the door and went back inside, where the coffee was still warm and Lily's burnt pancakes sat on the counter. It wasn't much, but it was a start. December in Philadelphia, Eagles playoff hopes roasted chestnuts at Reading Terminal Market, and the first Christmas I didn't have to bankroll someone else's manufactured perfection. I stood at the entrance of Reading Terminal with Lily beside me, both of us bundled in winter coats that had seen better years. She held a small notepad where she'd written our shopping list in careful handwriting. At the bottom, circled twice, budget $200. "Ready?" I asked. She grinned up at me. "Let's do this, Grandpa." We wove through the crowded market past the Amish bakers and the fishmongers, past tourists snapping photos and locals arguing about the best cheesesteak in the city. The air smelled like cinnamon and grilled onions and possibility. Lily led the way with her list. A small turkey from the butcher, $45. Fresh rolls from the Amish stand, $8. Green beans, potatoes, cranberry sauce. We calculated every dollar, laughing when we had to put back the fancy stuffing mix and go with the store brand instead. At the decoration stall, Lily picked up a string of lights that had a few bulbs missing. "These are on sale," she said, holding them up. "Half price because they're not perfect." I looked at those lights, mismatched, imperfect, half price, because someone had deemed them not good enough. "They're perfect for us," I said. She beamed. By the time we left, we'd spent $197. We carried our bags to the car, and Lily did a little victory dance in the parking lot. We did it, and we still have $3 left for hot chocolate. As we drove home, she looked over at me. "This is better than the fancy Christmases, isn't it?" I glanced at her. "What do you mean? The ones at the big house, with the caterers and the photographers Mom hired to take pictures for her social media. Everything had to be perfect. The tree had to be designer. The presents had to be expensive, but nobody was actually happy." She looked down at her hands. "This feels real." I reached over and squeezed her shoulder. "It is real, sweetheart. This is what Christmas is supposed to feel like." The week leading up to Christmas, Brandon showed up 3 times. Each visit, he looked a little more solid, a little more present. He'd bring his GA meeting schedule to show me or tell me about his shift supervisor at Target, who was teaching him inventory management. On his 3rd visit, I asked him to stay for dinner. We sat at my kitchen table, the same Formica table where I'd calculated how much I'd given him, where I'd realized how much I'd lost. But tonight it felt different. Brandon helped Lily with her math homework while I made spaghetti. Simple, normal. As we ate, Brandon set down his fork. "Dad, I need to tell you something." I waited. The reason I didn't call for so long after everything happened, it wasn't just shame. Courtney was blackmailing me. Lily looked up, her eyes wide. Brandon's jaw tightened. "She knew about the money I took from you. She said if I didn't keep giving her what she wanted, she'd report it to the police herself. Make sure I lost custody of Lily. Make sure I went to prison." His voice cracked. I was terrified, so I stayed quiet, kept my head down, tried to figure out how to get clean and get strong enough to fight back. "And now?" I asked. "Now we're getting divorced." She gave up custody of Lily in exchange for a one-time payment of $5,000. Money I don't have, so I'm paying it off in installments. He looked at me. "I didn't ask you for it, and I'm not going to. This is my mess. I'll clean it up." I studied him across the table. There was no manipulation in his eyes, no angle, just exhaustion and determination. Good, I said simply. He nodded, relief softening his face. Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear. Bill Thompson came over around 5 carrying a pie his sister had made. Lily's friend Zoe from school showed up with her mom, who dropped her off with a plate of cookies. And Brandon arrived on the bus at 6, carrying a worn paper shopping bag. We crammed around my table, 5 of us in a kitchen built for 2. The turkey was a little dry. The mashed potatoes were lumpy. The string of half-price lights blinked unevenly over the doorway. It was the best Christmas I'd had in years. After dinner, as we cleared plates, Brandon pulled out his shopping bag. I didn't have much for gifts this year, he said, looking at Lily. But I wanted to give you something. He handed her a book. It was old, the cover creased and faded. The Phantom Toll Booth. This was mine, he said quietly. When I was your age. Your grandma Kathy read it to me when I was in the hospital with pneumonia. I loved it so much I read it 10 more times on my own. Lily turned it over in her hands, running her fingers over the worn spine. You're giving me your favorite book? Yeah, Brandon said, because you deserve to know that I wasn't always what I became. I used to be a kid who loved stories, who believed in things. I want you to have that part of me. The part that was still good. Lily threw her arms around him, and I saw Brandon close his eyes, holding her tight. Then he turned to me. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. Plain white, sealed. This is for you, Dad. I opened it. Inside was a check for $300. In the memo line, he'd written first payment. I stared at it. $300. From a man making $16 an hour, working 40 hours a week, paying rent on a studio apartment, and buying bus passes to get to work. It's not much, Brandon said, his voice low. I know it doesn't even scratch the surface of what I took, but it's honest money. Every dollar I earned on my feet stocking shelves doing the work. No shortcuts, no schemes. I looked up at him. His eyes were wet. I'm going to keep paying you back, he said. $300 a month, every month. For as long as it takes, even if it takes 20 years, even if I'm old and gray, because you deserved better than what I gave you, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. The room was quiet. Bill looked down at his plate. Zoe glanced between us, sensing something important was happening, even if she didn't understand what. I folded the check and put it back in the envelope. Thank you, I said. Brandon exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. Later, after everyone had left and Lily was asleep upstairs, I sat alone in my living room. The half-price lights blinked above the doorway. The leftover turkey sat in Tupperware in the fridge. The envelope with Brandon's check rested on the coffee table in front of me. $300 would never repay $75,000. It wouldn't come close to the $1.3 million I'd spent over 6 years. Mathematically, it was meaningless. But it wasn't about the math. It was about a man who used to steal from me now, choosing to pay me back. A man who used to take buses past Target on his way to his corner office, now clocking in for the early shift. A man who used to demand more, now offering what little he had. I picked up the envelope and held it. I'd rather have $300 earned through sweat and dignity than $19,000 taken from shame and entitlement. Because this $300 wasn't just money. It was proof that my son was still in there somewhere. And maybe, just maybe, he was finally finding his way home. The boardwalk at Cape May smells like salt air funnel cake and promises kept. I pulled the Civic into the motel parking lot just after noon on a Saturday in late January. The off-season rates had made Lily's budget stretch even further. She'd been bouncing in her seat for the last 20 miles. Her nose pressed against the window, watching for the first glimpse of ocean. There, she shouted, pointing. Grandpa, I can see it. The Atlantic stretched out gray and endless beyond the dunes, winter waves rolling in steady and strong. It wasn't the postcard-perfect summer scene most people imagined, but to me it was better, quieter, real. We'd left Philadelphia at 7 that morning, Lily's playlist filling the car, a mix of songs I'd never heard, and a few old ones she'd added because she knew I'd like them. She'd asked me to tell her stories as we drove, so I did. About the times I'd brought Brandon here when he was small. About the sandcastles we'd built and the hermit crabs we'd caught. About how Kathy would pack sandwiches and we'd stay on the beach until the sun went down. Dad loved it here, Lily had asked, her voice surprised. He did, I'd said, before everything got complicated, before he started measuring worth in dollar signs. She'd gone quiet after that, staring out the window. Now, standing in the motel parking lot, she grabbed her backpack and looked up at the building. The Seabreeze Motel wasn't fancy, 2 stories of weathered blue siding, a small pool covered for winter, and a neon sign missing the E in Breeze. But Lily's eyes lit up like we'd arrived at a palace. $89 a night, she whispered, clutching her budget sheet. Just like I planned. The room was small, 2 double beds with floral bedspreads, a TV bolted to the dresser, and a view of the parking lot. But when Lily opened the curtains, you could see a sliver of ocean between the buildings across the street. It's perfect, she said, dropping her bag on the bed closest to the window. We changed into warmer clothes and walked down to the boardwalk. January in Cape May meant most shops were closed. The beach nearly empty except for a few locals walking their dogs. But the ocean was still there, vast and unchanging, and Lily ran toward it like she'd been waiting her whole life. I followed, slower hands in my jacket pockets, watching her stop at the water's edge and stare out at the horizon. The wind whipped her hair around her face. She looked small against the endless gray water, but she didn't look afraid. She looked free. "Grandpa," she called back. "Come look." I joined her at the shoreline and she pointed down at the sand. Small shells, bits of sea glass, foam from broken waves washing over our shoes. "You're going to teach me how to find the good shells, right? That's the plan." We spent an hour walking the beach, me showing her how to spot the unbroken ones, how to read the tide patterns, how to watch for the pull of the waves. Simple skills, things my father had taught me, things I'd taught Brandon when he was young, things he'd forgotten somewhere along the way. By 4 o'clock, Lily's pockets were full of shells and sea glass, and we were both hungry. We found a small seafood shack a few blocks off the boardwalk, the kind of place with paper plates, plastic forks, and prices written on a chalkboard. Lily ordered the crab cake sandwich. I got the same. We sat at a picnic table outside, bundled in our coats, eating with our fingers while seagulls circled overhead. "Ah, this is exactly what I imagined," Lily said, wiping Old Bay seasoning off her chin. "When I was saving all that money, I used to think about us sitting somewhere like this. Just the 2 of us. No fancy restaurants where I had to worry about using the right fork. Just this." I looked at her across the table, this 14-year-old girl who'd given up 6 years of small joys to give me one perfect weekend. "You did good, kiddo," I said, my voice thick. After dinner, we walked the boardwalk until the sun started to set. Most of the game arcades were closed, but one was still open, a small place with skee-ball machines and claw games. Lily made a beeline for a crane game filled with stuffed animals. "I'm going to win that crab," she announced, pointing at a bright orange plush crab wedged in the back. "That thing's rigged," I said. "You know that, right?" She grinned. "I don't care. I want it." I handed her a $5 bill. "Go for it." She fed quarters into the machine, her face a mask of concentration as she maneuvered the claw. 3 tries. 4. 5. On the 6th try, the claw grabbed the crab's leg and hauled it up, then dropped it 2 inches from the chute. One more, she said, determination in her voice. On the seventh try, the claw locked on, swung the crab over, and dropped it perfectly into the chute. Lily let out a victorious yell that made the arcade attendant look up from his phone and grin. She pulled the stuffed crab out and held it up like a trophy. I'm naming him Clyde. Clyde the crab. Yep. And he's going to sit on my bed forever and remind me of this trip. We walked back to the motel as the streetlights flickered on. The temperature was dropping, the wind coming off the ocean sharp and cold. But Lily didn't seem to notice. She walked beside me, clutching Clyde, talking about shells and waves and whether we could come back next year. Back in the room, she showered and changed into her pajamas, then climbed into bed with Clyde tucked under her arm. I sat in the chair by the window, watching her eyes grow heavy. Thank you, Grandpa, she murmured, half asleep already, for keeping your promise. Thank you, I said quietly, for reminding me what promises are worth. Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing soft and steady. I stepped out onto the small balcony outside our room. The ocean was dark now, just the sound of waves rolling in, and the distant lights of ships on the horizon. The air was cold enough to sting my lungs, but I stayed there anyway, leaning against the railing, looking out at the water. For 6 years, I'd spent $19,200 every month trying to buy happiness for people who didn't know what it looked like. I'd drained my retirement, my savings, my dignity. I'd given everything to build a life for my son that he'd never appreciated and my granddaughter had never wanted. But this, a $89 motel room, paper plate crab cakes, a stuffed animal won from a rigged crane game, this was worth more than every dollar I'd ever spent, because I'd kept a promise. And the look on Lily's face when that crab dropped into the chute was worth more than any mansion, any luxury car, any designer label. I'd finally learned what my father tried to teach me 40 years ago. The most valuable thing a man owns isn't in his bank account. It's his word. And I'd just spent the best $200 of my life proving it. Dawn broke over the bay on Saturday morning, painting the water pink and gold. I stood on the beach with 2 buckets, a ball of string, and chicken necks from the bait shop. Lily appeared beside me, bundled in her jacket, eyes bright. Is this really how you catch crabs? She asked. This is how we did it when I was a kid, I said. Just patience, string, and bait. I showed her how to tie the chicken neck, lower it slowly into the shallow water, and wait. The trick is patience, I told her. You can't rush a crab. We stood in the early morning, cold waves lapping at our feet. 5 minutes passed. 10. Lily shifted, impatient. How long does it take? As long as it takes, I said. Good things don't come fast. Then I feel something, Lily whispered. Pull it up, slow and steady. A blue crab clung to the chicken neck, claws up defiant. She squealed as I scooped it into the bucket. I did it, Grandpa! I did it! We caught 3 more that morning. None were big enough to keep, so we let them go. But Lily didn't care. She'd caught a crab with her own hands. Later, walking the beach collecting shells, Lily grew quiet. Grandpa, she said finally, do you think you'll ever forgive Dad, like really forgive him? I looked at the waves rolling in one after another. I'm trying, I said, and your dad is working hard to deserve that. Right now, that's enough. I think he's really trying this time, she said. He looks different. I know, I said. And that's what matters. Not who he was, who he's becoming. She took my hand, and we walked back to the motel. We checked out at noon. Lily clutched Clyde the crab, her backpack rattling with shells. She fell asleep near Atlantic City, a small smile on her face. I drove through southern New Jersey, then back into Philadelphia. Fishtown looked the same. Row houses pressed close neighbors on their steps in the January cold. Home. As I unlocked the door, I noticed a box on the porch. Plain brown cardboard, no label. Inside was a picture frame wrapped in newspaper. The Christmas Eve photo. All 6 of us around my kitchen table. Bill with his arm around me. Zoe laughing. Brandon and Lily side by side. Me at the head, my hand on the half-price lights. Proof the moment had been real. Tucked in the frame was a folded note. Brandon's handwriting shaky but clear. Dad, 90 days sober. 90 days, no gambling. I registered for a business ethics class at community college. Night classes twice a week. I'm working toward getting custody of Lily back. Not now, I'm not ready. But someday. I want to be the kind of father you were. The kind of man Mom believed I could be. I hope one day you'll be proud of me again. Love, Brandon. 90 days. 3 months of choosing differently. 3 months of stocking shelves and attending meetings and sitting in classrooms. It wasn't enough to erase $75,000. It wasn't enough to undo 6 years of exploitation. But it was a start. I set the frame on the mantel beside Kathy's photo. I hope I'm doing this right, I said to her picture. But he's trying. Lily came downstairs, Clyde under her arm. Whose picture is that? Ours, I said. Your dad brought it by. She studied it. We look happy. We were, I said. We are. 10 months passed like that. Small moments. Steady progress. One Tuesday morning in November, I sat at my kitchen table. Lily's backpack hung by the door. The Cape May photo stuck to the fridge, the half-price Christmas lights still strung overhead, because Lily wanted them year-round. My bank account, $64,000. Not much for a man who once had over $1 million, but I felt richer than I ever had. The mail came. Bills, junk, and a plain envelope with Brandon's handwriting. The 8th payment. A check for $300. Memo line payment 8 of 8 months. 8 payments. $2,400 total. Against $75,000, it was nothing, but it was everything. I tore the check in half, then in half again. Dropped the pieces in the trash. Brandon didn't need the weight of impossible debt anymore. He'd paid me back in ways that mattered more. By showing up sober every Sunday, by taking Lily to the park, by learning ethics in community college classrooms, by stocking shelves at Target with his head up. That was worth more than $75,000, more than the $1.3 million I'd spent over 6 years. He was becoming a man his mother would recognize. That afternoon, Lily came home with college brochures. Temple has a good social work program, she said. Maybe I could help families like ours, the ones that get lost. My throat tightened. That's a beautiful dream. And I could stay here, with you, commute instead of dorms. You don't have to. I know, she said, but I want to stay where there's real love. I took her hand. Then you stay as long as you want. That evening, Brandon called. Dad, I got promoted. Shift supervisor. They said I'm reliable. They said they trust me. His voice broke. I'm proud of you, I said. I'm trying, Dad. Every day. I know you are son. After he hung up, I sat alone looking at the 2 photos on the mantel, Kathy in one, all of us at Christmas in the other. I thought about the old math. $19,200 a month. $1,382,400 over 6 years. 172 payments to people who never said thank you. But tonight I did different math, $64,000 in savings. A house filled with laughter. A granddaughter who chose love over luxury. A son learning to stand. Burnt pancakes. Cape May. Promises kept. By any measure that actually matters, I was the richest man in Philadelphia. The measure of a man isn't in his bank account. It's not in his car or house or paycheck. It's in his word, his presence. Whether he shows up when it's hard. I failed that test for years. I thought providing meant giving money. I thought love looked like luxury. But love looks like burnt pancakes, like an $89 motel room, like a stuffed crab named Clyde, like a son on a city bus, working an honest job, becoming the man he should have been. I walked upstairs and knocked on Lily's door. Just wanted to say goodnight. She hugged me. Love you. Love you too, sweetheart. I headed to bed, the same bed I'd had for 20 years, the same quilt Kathy's mother made. And as I closed my eyes, I realized I may not have much money left, but I have everything that matters. And by any measure worth counting, that makes me the richest man alive. Looking back at my story, I see a man who confused family betrayal with love, who mistook enabling for support. I gave $1, $3 million trying to buy respect, only to learn that real wealth can't be deposited in a bank. Don't be like me. Don't wait until you're 64 to understand that boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to healthier relationships. Grandpa stories like mine aren't meant to inspire pity. They're lessons in what I learned: too late love without accountability isn't love at all. The hardest lesson. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. When I finally cut off the money, I didn't abandon Brandon. I gave him the chance to find himself. Family betrayal cuts deep, but enabling cuts deeper. It took my son stealing $75,000 and my grandpa heartbreaking before I understood the difference. My faith taught me that God doesn't call us to be ATMs for our children. He calls us to be fathers, present, firm, and loving enough to let them fall so they can learn to rise. Grandpa stories should end with wisdom earned, not regrets rehearsed. Here's mine: measure your worth by your word, not your wallet. The richest inheritance isn't money. It's the example of a man who loved well and knew when to let go. Family betrayal taught me that sometimes you save people by refusing to save them. Choose differently. Choose sooner. Choose wisely. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Drop a comment. What would you do in Vincent's shoes? Torn between love and tough choices, I want to hear your perspective. If this story touched you, consider subscribing so you don't miss what comes next. Quick disclaimer. While inspired by real family dynamics, some elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this isn't your preference, feel free to explore other content.